And good afternoon, everyone. I do want to start by thanking the organizers of this PAN forum for the opportunity to speak to you all about the University of Connecticut's Brittle Books project, which we recently embarked on in consultation with East and with HathiTrust. So since 2016, the University of Connecticut has been an East Monographs retention partner. We contributed about 280,000 titles to East retention for a 15-year period. This is equivalent to over 15% of our total monographic holdings. However, in the course of a multi-year reclassification project where we were converting a portion of our legacy collections that were Dewey classed to LC class and integrating those into the main stacks, that work surfaced around 250 East committed titles that were in a brittle or otherwise unusable state. And when I say unusable, I'm really relying on the Rosemont definition of usability, which states that a physical piece is usable if it is in adequate physical condition for lending via resource sharing, including loans or scans. The limitation with monographs, of course, is that physical lending is really the only widely supported way to access print books. There have been great conversations around controlled digital lending. We can certainly scan individual chapters and share those with offsite patrons, but in general, physically lending is the only widely supported way to access pbooks. And when we say brittle, what we're generally doing is talking about irreparably broken binding, multiple detached pages, crumbling paper, issues that our in-house conservator has assessed meet the criteria for unusability. So what happens when a book is flagged as brittle or unusable? Right now, we have around 4 options for disposition of brittle books that are committed to retention. We can retain that book. We can stabilize it, box it up, put it back in the stacks. Our concern was that that was sort of kicking the can down the road because those materials are still really not physically lendable with the ease that we would like. And on-site usage would be not feasible given the geographic distribution of East from Vermont to Florida. We could attempt to repair those books, but generally they are not repairable, whether by in-house conservation or commercial binderies. We could attempt to replace the book, and we often do, but there we run into issues of cost and availability on the open market. And we run into the challenge where any books that we try to purchase would be in a similarly deteriorated state, or could be in a different edition that we might end up being stuck with. And finally, we could reallocate the retention commitment, but there we run into the same problem of other libraries' copies potentially experiencing the same state of deterioration, as well as the fact that a fair number of these Yukon brittle books are simply not available elsewhere within East. So it would be not infeasible to transfer the retention commitment. What we are envisioning is these new potential options for disposition of brittle books. We're looking at validating digital surrogates that are in full view in HathiTrust, verifying at a page level the legibility and completeness of the same edition digital surrogates that are already in HathiTrust. And then the next step potentially is looking at digitizing our own print copies if there's no digital surrogate already in HathiTrust, and contributing our own scans to HT in order to provide for digital preservation and access. What we would then do with the print originals is transfer them to special collections if they meet conditions for being in scope and for rarity, whether those are our own special collections or find some way to offer those to other East members or other libraries. We could donate those copies to the Internet Archive, which of course have their own scanning and access workflows, or we could deaccession them if they do not meet our thresholds for scarcity. So this fall, we embarked on a validation study with HathiTrust Digital Surrogates. It's a pilot project. A couple of our staff, as time allows, have been doing page level validation of digital surrogates in HT. They've been downloading the book's PDF and paging through it and comparing the PDF to the print copy in hand, comparing the two versions using a very simple checksum, which is still under iteration. Some of our early findings, we have about 250 Brittle books in total. Of those, 150 are in full view in HathiTrust, 40 are in limited view, and 60 are not in HT at all and are not otherwise present in East holding commitments. Of those 150, we validated 25 so far using a randomizer in Excel. That's equivalent to 9,000 pages in about 600 minutes. So an average rate of 15 pages per minute at 360 pages per book. Of those 25, 16 had no real issues. There might have been some overly light scanning, but everything is still readable and legible, and the scan was complete. 7 had page level issues, so there may have been a grainy image or a duplicate. And only 2 had really significant issues where there were missing pages or where the text was concealed by scanning artifacts. So the next step in this process is, of course, complete the validation study. We have 125 more books to go, and regroup with our stakeholders and with HathiTrust and East, and really get a sense of how we can feed validation data back to HathiTrust, whether for correction of the digital surrogates or finding some way of capturing consistently the fact that these copies were validated at a page level. And then really assessing, when does the digital surrogate become adequate as a replacement for a print retention commitment? What criteria need to be met? And of course, digitizing the Brittle books not yet in HathiTrust and contributing those scans. Long-term consideration in preserving presumptively in copyright digital surrogates in HT really doesn't solve the access problem, because these books are going to be in limited view until they come out of copyright. So long term, we really need to unpack this access problem. And there have certainly been really interesting conversations around controlled digital lending in a consortial or shared print context that have just started, but I hope hold promise. And I'm hopeful that this work can also inform the work of the Partnership for Shared Book Collections, in particular the Last Copy Working Group on which I serve. And throughout, we have to consider the scalability and sustainability of this pilot in light of staffing capacity and other questions at UConn and beyond. Thank you so much for the opportunity again to share this information. And if anyone has questions, feel free to ask now or to contact me at michaelr@uconn.edu.
Question maybe for you and the wider audience is that Jeff asks, I think section 108 should allow a library that holds a Brittle book to get full access through HathiTrust. Is there anyone here who might be able to confirm that?
Well, I guess that might be me. And so what I can report, like 2020, as you can all imagine, things got behind, but HathiTrust is working on a procedure for sort of out of print and Brittle books and missing items through the section 108. So while we can't do it quite yet, it is something that we're actively working on.
Thank you, Heather. A question from Paula is, have you considered preservation, photocopying and binding those that are in limited view?
Yes, that's certainly a possibility for preservation of the print. So that's another branch in our preservation conversations. That is something we're discussing.
Well, thank you again, Michael, for your presentation, and thank you to all the presenters from today. I just wanted to remind folks that the slides and the recording of today's session will be added to the PAN website. And just a reminder that the informal